So my name is Louise McLean. I work for North Lanarkshire Council in the Community Learning and Development Family Learning team as a Development Officer for Parenting and Family Learning. So I attended the launch of the strategic framework in, I think it was May 2023. And at the launch, Gail McLeod was there presenting and talking about the Edinburgh model and the research that she had undertaken, which involved a student teacher working alongside some community learning and development workers, and essentially about the long-term sustainable impacts that had. So when I then came away from the session and reflected on the North Lanarkshire context, we are very unique in that we have a specific community learning and development family learning team. We work very closely with a range of partners, including those in all stages of the formal education settings. So we were very well placed, and in our opinion there was an opportunity for us to work closer with our colleagues, build on the relationships between the community learning and development staff and our colleagues in education. And all, because I suppose really when we think about our national agenda, such as the GIRFEC agenda, no one service is going to achieve outcomes and improve outcomes for children, young people and families in isolation. It's about how we all work together and complement one another. So there was an opportunity for the two areas of professional practice to come together and support one another around the development of professional learning and skills in terms of parental engagement and family learning. But I do think having a student teacher on placement with us was particularly helpful in terms of shared approaches around parental engagement and family learning, and there was an opportunity for Fraser to gain more experience and understanding of the CL&D approach. I suppose the benefits have been that you have, I suppose there's twofold. There's one in that you have another perspective on the work that the team do, and that allows you an opportunity to, to have some critical discussions and unpack those areas of practice, which can bring you to a new shared understanding. And I suppose for me that's where some of the transformational change comes around in terms of our own learning. I would also say that in terms of considering it was students, it's for our team, I think there's a real motivation and opportunity to support student teachers, because they're the next generation of teachers who are going to be working in schools, supporting children, young people and families. And it's about how, again, going back to some of our national perspectives, there's more and more emphasis across every national agenda about services working together to improve outcomes. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to develop that work on the ground. So I suppose in terms of what went well, initially the interest in the pilot I think was more than we had perhaps initially anticipated, and from that the benefits of the relationships built with UWS and Louise, and also the opportunities developing for any further pilots. So in terms of what went well, initially the interest around the pilot and the partnerships that developed from that, in particular with UWS and Louise Barrett, and the discussions that took place with ourselves from the CL&D Family Learning team, UWS and also Education Scotland, in terms of how we could develop and adapt this pilot to suit the needs of both the family learning team but also the student teachers, and how it could enhance their experiences within their university training. Essentially, in terms of developing the programme, it was really helpful for us to have a look at the opportunities that we provide within the service and the key areas of learning that we would want to share with partners. There was some of the programme that we put together that we did have to go back and change and modify, because the pilot came around fairly quickly and with quite short notice. So we did go back and modify the original plans and had to remove some aspects of it in terms of timelines. So some of the things that we may choose to adapt as we move forward would be some of the logistics. We recognise that because the pilot came around within a fairly tight time scale, that had implications on the timelines of the information accessible for the students. So one of the key areas that we had hoped to build into the placement programme was the First Steps to Family Learning, which was a programme that was developed within North Lanarkshire CL&D Family Learning team and is levelled on the SCQF framework at level 5. So it provides a pathway, an opportunity for people looking for a career within the family learning environment. And we felt that that would be a fantastic opportunity for students to, participate in that course and enhance their skills, but also give them an understanding on some of the theory and background around the CL&D approach and parental engagement and family learning. So again, we would perhaps consider, or we would be hopeful to include that for further placements. We would also consider the timelines around the groups that are provided by the team and the range of opportunities for students so that we have a balance across family learning activities and also parental engagement activities. And because some of the parental engagement groups run over a full term, it would be helpful if we considered the best way to approach that in a way that works for the universities and their timetables. I would say that the CL&D teams are comfortable with students from universities. We do work closely with UWS in terms of the community education or community learning development students. However, I do think it was beneficial for the staff team to have a student teacher who had a slightly different approach, and I do think that the depth of the discussion that brought around also benefited the staff team in their understandings of schools and the teaching process for the student teachers. I would say that an unintended consequence in a positive way that we hadn't anticipated was that the student teacher who was placed with us, Fraser, has then gone on to have his probationary year placement within North Lanarkshire, and that from my perspective, I would say that's a huge benefit because he has already built up relationships with the staff team and not only the family learning team within CL&D in North Lanarkshire. He's also met some of the youth work staff, some of the adult learning team, some of the resettlement staff, but he also has a greater understanding of the approach, but also the wide range of supports that are available, not only through CL&D, but also in his wider community that can assist in his role as a teacher. Advice, I would say go for it. The feedback that we've had from Fraser, who was our student teacher involved in our initial pilot, has given the same advice and said that anyone should go for it. He certainly feeds back that he feels much more confident in his role moving forward and knowing more around the supports that are available to families and that he can signpost people to and link them in with when he undertakes his career as a teacher. Yes, perhaps another benefit of the placement was an opportunity to unpack and discuss some of the terminology, look at some of the research around family learning and parental engagement, and from that comes some of the definitions and terminology used within the strategic framework. So, that we were able to have critical discussions and unpack the differences between parental involvement, parental engagement, and then family learning. And I think as it Goodall talks about, it's not who parents are, it's what they do that counts. And I think to see that in action and have that understanding of the relationships and the learning that goes on within the home environment. I mean, en route to this session this morning, I refreshed myself with the strategic framework, and that 15% of time is what children spend in school. So the 85% of time that they're not spending in school, family learning is an opportunity for us to support those learning and skills around life and families that happen in homes and across our communities. So it gave us an opportunity to look across services, what are the different interpretations of those definitions, and what does that look like in practice, and then also linking that up with what does the research tell us. So some of the lessons that were learned for future placements, again, the initial expectation was that the offer was made to third-year students. However, it transpired that Fraser, who came to us, was a fourth-year student, but the benefits of that were that he had completed his coursework, so he didn't have the additional pressures of trying to maintain the placement and also finish and engage in coursework materials. Another benefit was that by the point that Fraser came to engage in the placement, he was confident in his skills and the learning that he had had through his initial teacher education, whereas I do wonder on reflection whether if he'd come into a placement perhaps at an earlier stage in first or second year, if he wouldn't have been at a point in his own learning to take on board the additionality that the placement offered. Whereas on reflection, I would say that he was secure in his learning and knowledge from his initial teacher education, that it was more of a CPD opportunity and he could look at how he could, work on the transferable skills he developed through his degree and how the engagement with our team, he could use those skills in another way and take them into his career moving forward.